Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about the world's most famous love poem. We are stripping away the Valentine's Day clichés, the boxed chocolates, and all that modern pop culture fluff to uncover the gritty, intense, historical reality behind Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. If you're thinking this is just some sweet little poem about a pretty summer day, well, you are in for a seriously wild ride.
You know this line, I know this line. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It's universally recognized as the ultimate romantic gesture, right? We read it at weddings. We print it on literally millions of greeting cards every single year. It's totally ingrained in our minds as the absolute pinnacle of perfect, swooning romance. But as you'll see in a minute, the true story is infinitely more fascinating.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We naturally assume this poem was inspired by pure romance and wedding bells. But the actual historical catalyst? The bubonic plague and severe financial ruin. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The inspiration for this absolute masterpiece wasn't a candlelit dinner. It was a terrifying, highly contagious disease and the sheer, panic-inducing reality of a 16th century economic crash.
Part 1. The Plague's Gig Economy.
To really grasp what's going on here, we got to look at the timeline of a crisis. Back in 1591, this massive literary trend hits England, the sonnet vogue. Basically, everyone who wanted to climb the social ladder was suddenly writing sonnets. But then, between 1592 and 1594, severe outbreaks of the plague hit London. To stop the spread, the government completely shut down all the public theaters. For a playwright and actor like Shakespeare, this was catastrophic. His entire livelihood just vanished overnight. He couldn't put on plays, so to avoid starving, he had to pivot. He entered what was basically the Elizabethan gig economy, turning to writing poetry for wealthy aristocrats who could provide financial patronage. Survival, not just art, was the driving force here.
Part 2. Meeting the Fair Youth.
So here is the crucial twist. Sonnet 18 wasn't actually written for a woman. It's addressed to a young, beautiful, aristocratic man. And it sits right after a sequence known as the procreation sonnets, which follows a seriously frantic logic. Just imagine Shakespeare grabbing this young lord by the shoulders and saying, okay, step 1, you are incredibly beautiful. Step 2, you are going to grow old, wrinkle, and die, which, by the way, was a very real, everyday threat during a plague. Therefore, step 3, you need to get married and have children immediately so your beauty can live on. It is essentially a full-blown biological panic.
But then, Shakespeare has this major breakthrough, heavily influenced by the concept of ars longa vita brevis. This is classical Renaissance humanist philosophy, and it translates to art is long, life is short. Think about it. When you're living through a pandemic, you become acutely aware that physical life is desperately fleeting. Shakespeare realizes that biological reproduction actually isn't the only way to cheat death. Human bodies fail, sure, but the written word endures.
And that brings us to the ultimate pivot in Sonnet 18. He stops telling the young man to go have kids, and instead writes this. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, when in eternal lines to time thou growst. Shakespeare is basically saying, actually, scratch that, I don't need you to reproduce. My pen is going to give you literal immortality. You are going to live forever inside these lines of poetry.
Part 3. Who was Mr. W.H.?
Now, the 1609 publication of these sonnets was notoriously dedicated to a mysterious Mr. W.H. Scholars generally debate between two prime suspects here. First up, we have Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton. He was Shakespeare's major patron during those harsh plague years. He was famously handsome, and he fiercely refused an arranged marriage, which perfectly aligns with Shakespeare begging him to settle down and have kids. On the flip side, we have William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke. His initials literally matched W.H. He later became a patron of Shakespeare's acting company, and he also notoriously dodged arranged marriages in his youth. Both of these guys perfectly fit the profile of a wealthy, beautiful aristocrat that a struggling, out-of-work writer would desperately want to impress.
So what was the actual nature of this relationship? We've got two competing perspectives. The transactional view reminds us that Shakespeare was dead broke during a plague. Calling a wealthy patron more lovely than a summer's day, that is the ultimate form of professional brown-nosing just to secure a paycheck. But we absolutely cannot ignore the emotional or queer view. The language across this entire fair youth sequence is deeply intimate, incredibly possessive, and highly romantic. Now, while modern labels like gay or bisexual obviously didn't exist in the 16th century, the sonnet strongly suggests a profound, possibly physical homoerotic infatuation. Honestly, it's entirely possible that both views are true at the exact same time, a really blurry line between financial survival and genuine love.
Part 4. Subverting the Italian Masters.
By the 1590s, the traditional sonnet style, which was invented by the Italian poet Petrarch, was frankly a tired cliché. It was always male poets weeping over unattainable women, comparing them to perfect suns or flawless spring days. Shakespeare looks at this and just laughs. He points out that nature is actually incredibly flawed. Let's be real, English summers kind of suck sometimes. There are rough winds that shake the buds of May, the season is way too short, the sun is sometimes blindingly hot or it's completely overcast. He argues that his beloved is actually better, gentler, and more temperate than an actual, often unpleasant summer's day. He is completely dunking on his literary rivals by injecting a dose of gritty reality into the romance.
Part 5. Shakespeare's ultimate literary flex.
It all comes down to this final couplet. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. This is a mic drop of epic proportions. Shakespeare is looking at this beautiful, wealthy lord and essentially saying, listen, you're going to lose your hair, get old, and die. But because I am a sheer genius with a pen, people are going to be reading my words centuries from now. My talent is the absolute only reason anyone will ever remember you. And, as we sit here reading his exact words today, we kind of have to admit, he was absolutely right. So, I want to leave you with this to think about. When you factor in the closed theaters, the deadly plague, the desperate gig economy, and the sheer unfiltered arrogance of that final couplet, did Shakespeare write a beautiful love letter to a wealthy patron, or did he write a fierce, enduring love letter to his own survival and his own genius? The next time you see this poem on a Valentine's Day card, remember the plague, the panic, and the absolute flex of a writer fighting to live forever. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.